I'm from
You are?
no, I'm from Brazil.
From Brazil. Okay. Yeah, that's America's in that sense. Yeah. So, none of you've traveled in in the southern part of Europe or northern part of the Middle East? Okay, okay. So let's do it this way. Any of you been to Morocco, Tunisia, that area? No. Egypt? Syria? Iraq? Palestine? Turkey?
Yes. Yes.
There we go. Okay. Greece?
Yes.
Greece, all right. Italy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Europe, okay. Spain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Southern Europe. How about a little further east, Iran? Afghanistan? India?
I have.
One. Okay. All right, you international school. Maybe you should. Okay. It seems you're well acquainted with the southern part of Europe. That's good. Now, as I said, we're going to see works of art from here, from quite an extensive period. And I'll just give you a crash course in the spread of Islam over the years, because this will be very useful for you before we go ahead. In 632, Muhammad dies, and the Muslim community in the world are gathered here around the two holy cities, Mecca and Medina. Only about 100 years later, Islam has spread from Spain in the west to the borders of India in the east. This is quite a large area in quite a short time. The reason why Islam spread in this manner is not really documented yet, but it seems that it became a popular religion in places where there were conflicts, or at least in places where people were preferring Islam to what was there before. It was not a huge army that was able to force everyone to become Muslims. More likely it was a religion that spread through trade and travelers. Of course, there were people who did not find Islam very interesting or were against it. Then there would be battles of different kinds, and this is about the area that was, in the first place, was conquered by the Muslim rulers. In 1100, it looks like this. You might remark that southern Spain, the place called Al-Andalus in Arabic, Andalusia, was once part of the huge Muslim empire. In year 1500, it looks like this. Spain is no longer part of the Muslim empire, but large parts of Africa, as well as large parts of India. In 1850, it looks like this, which is pretty much what it looks like today. If you were to make a map of the area in where Islam is the biggest religion. So, when seeing this green area, naturally it does not mean that everyone is Muslim, but the majority is. There are Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, and other religions as well. But in this area, you'll find the Muslim world today as well as in 1850. This is just to give you an idea of the many places we're going to see in a moment. If you walk up the stairs now and stand in the first room along the walls until everybody's inside, that would be the way to go. Works of art, you could call it, but perhaps just we could call it one of the first objects from the world of Islam. This is a page from the Quran from about year 700. So it's from the period just after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. It's a piece of skin on which the Quran has been put down with ink. Now, the crazy thing about the Quran is this. It has never been changed. Are there any Muslims in this class, by the way?
Yes.
2, all right. You might know this, though I'll be saying things that you probably are well aware of, then hopefully there'll be some additional information. If you buy a Quran today in a shop in Copenhagen or Helsingør, you'll find that somewhere in the Quran there is the exact same page as you see here. The same wording, the same letters, the same sentences, nothing has changed. This is due to the fact that unlike other holy books, it was decided already from the start. Could you close the door?
Yes.
That the Quran should not be changed. It was the word of God transmitted to the Prophet Muhammad, and it should not be changed. So all Muslims who have lived on this earth, from the first until you two guys today, have all been acquainted with the same document, the same manuscript, without any changes. This is quite different from, say, the Bible. The Bible, of course, is also an old text. It's also, I believe, a text that has been repeated over the years, but changes have been made. Little changes here and there with the language. So you cannot say it's the same text that was used way back. But the Quran, from when it was done in the first period, which is this period where this page is from, until today has been unchanged. That was one important point. Now, if you turn to see another Quran here, which is a Quran from Afghanistan, not as old as the first one we saw, this one is from about the year 1500 from Afghanistan. You see here Quran in 30 issues, of which we have chosen 8 to open, so that it will be possible to see what a spread in a Quran manuscript typically looks like. Do you have a Quran at home?
Yeah, I have it.
You have it. Does it look something like this when you open it? Does it have a similar layout, similar writing, similar decoration?
No, I think the decoration, they are kind of different.
The decoration can be very different.
Yeah, the outer part, like.
Okay.
Not
Yes.
the words, but the decoration.
But the decoration can be
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
Right. This is an Afghan Quran, as I said. It can be a little different, decorated differently, but most Qurans look somehow similar to this issue. And what's interesting today, or what I'd like to point to, is the thing that's common to all Qurans, namely that there's something that's never put in any pages of any Qurans ever. Could you tell me what that is?
Pictures.
Pictures. You could find that in a Bible or in other holy books. You won't find it in the Quran. The reason being, when the religion was first spread about by Muhammad and his followers, it was said that there should be no praying or praising images or little figures, icons of any type. Muslims believe that you should adore Allah, who is everywhere and inside everything, and that it would be a mistake to regard a picture or a sculpture of some kind as a god. Therefore, no images in the Holy Book, because people might find that it was the image that was God and not God as such. That's the reason. There's another place where you don't have images. Where's that?
The mosque.
In the mosque. Right, where you pray. Or even if you pray at home, if your family prays, would there be a picture on the wall in that room?
No.
No, you take that away. Now, this is a tradition very natural to Muslims, but very different from a lot of other religions. It does not mean, however, that there are no pictures in the Islamic world. There are plenty of pictures everywhere. Even pictures of Muhammad. Several pictures. But never in the Quran and never in the mosque. But outside the religious sphere, you could say, you'll find imagery of all sorts. Let's move on. The thing we do here is you pick a coin, and then you can be told not only what the inscription on the coin says, but also what happened when the coin was made and by that, in that way, be told something about the period as a whole. Luna, why don't you pick a coin by pressing the glass in front of the coin with your finger?
By pressing
The glass? Yes. Your flat finger on the coin. Yeah. Okay. So you pick a coin or another one. Try another one just to see if it works.
Another one.
Yeah. Yeah. Pick a coin. You can see what it says, and you can have in English a text on what happened when the coin was minted. Now, I'm just introducing you to this because we're passing 18 of these coin cases, so there'll be plenty of time for you to test it yourself. I'll not venture into the details of the coins or the history of the coins. It's just the way we've organized them. Instead, I'll tell you something about early Islamic art, just right over here, as we move to the next period, first dynasty in the world of Islam. Now, what we saw over there is the period just after the lifetime of the Prophet. We've now moved about 200 years into the Islamic period. So we're about year 900 and we are in Iraq. When Islam spread, it was not that it changed people's life very much. Most people lived as they had done before, went to work, to school, went home, arranged themselves as always. Not much changed. New rulers, that was all. But we can see now, 200 years after Muhammad, that something did change, at least slowly. One of the things was the way you decorate things, the way you make imagery. Before in this area, you had images that were showing something, telling you something, symbolizing something. Now, suddenly, we find a decorative scheme consisting of very abstract decorations. Patterns, geometrical, plant ornaments, and calligraphy. Now, what does this tell us? It might tell us that fashion changed in Baghdad in year 900, but that's not all, because the next 1,000 years you'll find all over the Islamic world that this type of decoration becomes very popular and it's refined, and I might even say that the Muslim world becomes sort of world masters of abstract art. We do also find art that's not abstract, I'll get to that. But this becomes a very common, this becomes a very typical feature of the expressions of the Muslims. Now, in this very period, something else happens. Muslims solve the problems of how to show what is not showable or what is not allowed to be shown. If you turn around and look at the lamp over here, you'll see a mosque lamp from Iraq from around here 1000. How do you think it was lit? How did you light it up 1,000 years ago? What did you have to do? It was hanging in the mosque under the roof. Yes?
Take it with something and then...
You take it down, you put something in. What would you put in? Candle. Good idea. Candle, oil, something. You light it. What happens on the walls after you've lit the candle? You have the shadows, that's right. And the shadows, inside the shadows, you'll find a word. What does it say? Allah.
Allah.
Allah, Allah, Allah. So what you see here is the writing on the wall of the mosque, and that in itself, of course, is a nice little trick. The lamp shows the name, but it's more than that. This is the image of God. This is how you show God in the Muslim world. God is not an old man on a cloud. God is not an 8-armed thing with an elephant's head. It could be if you were in another religion. But for Muslims, God looks like this, A-L-L-A-H, written with Arab letters. This is God's image. This is God's logo. That's quite interesting. This too is another thing special to Islam. Most other religions have images of God of some kind. In the Muslim world, it's a word. Let's go to Spain. But it doesn't mean that there's no meaning at all in this. Because there is, as you will also see, you'll find that there are letters, there are texts here. What do you think the content of the text here would be, the theme? Maybe you can even read some of it. What's your name, sorry? Jamal. Oh, nice name. Means beautiful. Yeah. Where are you coming from? Tanzania. Okay, Karibu. Any guess? What would be the theme?
If I guess, it's a kind of showing the situations. This like today you can show this is the right one, this is the police. It's kind of like some sign to show that this is a place with someone.
Yes. Some of these texts have to do with religion, showing that this is a mosque. These are passages from the Quran. But don't make the mistake to think that every time you see something written with Arabic letters, it's religious stuff. It could be something else. This scarf here has Arab writing on it. Maybe it could have been your scarf if you'd been living in Spain in the year 1300. It says, look at me, how beautiful I am. Look at me, how beautiful I am. Look at me, how beautiful I am. And it just goes on. So, Arab letters are part of an alphabet with which, of course, you write all sorts of things. So the writing might not always be religious. It really depends if you're inside the religious room or not. This was just to give you an idea of the contents. But apart from that, actually Islamic art has little symbolism. It's patterns of different kind that demonstrate the craftsmanship of the artist. So what you want to do as an artist is not to tell a specific story, but you want to demonstrate how good you are at weaving or carpeting, or if you're a ceramicist, you want to demonstrate, your skills. So this is what Islamic art is about. Demonstrating your skills, and you also want to end up with something very valuable in terms of material. Not trying to tell something personal, but trying to demonstrate your skill. Let's move on. In this room, we actually moved from the historical trip that we were on a moment ago, and which we'll get back to, and into a more thematic room here, where we touch upon 14 different issues, all related to Islam and all of interest to people meeting Islam, maybe not necessarily for the first time, but encountering Islam. And I think I'll start with a very basic question to you, which I think you might be able to answer it, at least as a group. The 5 pillars of Islam. Have you read about the 5 pillars of Islam? Okay, let's have them. 1 pillar.
You have to pray 5 times a day.
Pray 5 times a day. That's all right?
Can I say?
Yes, of course.
Because I can say all of them.
Yes, yes.
First is to declare that there is no God to be worshipped but Allah.
There's no God to worship but Allah, and
The Prophet Muhammad is his messenger.
and the Prophet Muhammad at the first one. Okay, the confession. Yeah?
The second one to pray 5 times
Pray 5 times a day.
a day.
Yes.
The third one to fast in the month of Ramadan.
To fast in the month of Ramadan. All right?
Then the fourth one to give out zakat, like charity.
Charity.
Charity, yeah.
Or tax. Yes. All right.
And the last one is to visit the holy place Kaaba if you're in good health and you can afford to do so.
Very good.
Yeah.
And if you are in bad health or you cannot afford it, are you a bad Muslim?
No, you are totally It's not mandatory for you.
Okay, it's just an option. Otherwise, you just think about doing it. Very good. Now, we've got 5 objects over here related to these 5 pillars. I'll just go through them fast. Here's a plate. In the bottom of the plate, you'll find the image of 2 people. One is giving the other a date. You know what a date is?
Yeah.
This fruit. Now, what happens for a lot of Muslims is that at the end of the day, during Ramadan, you start eating when it gets night. And you start your meal with a date. Do you do that at home with your family? Do you do Ramadan?
No.
You don't do Ramadan. Okay, you do.
I do.
Do you start with a date, or that could be?
Yeah, if it's available,
Yes.
it's good to start with, but if it's not, then
Then you can take something else.
yes.
Then we've got here a little stone or a little clay thing, which is used by some Muslims when they pray. Now, there are various types of Muslims. Shia Muslims use these stones. Are you Sunni or Shia?
I'm Muslim, but I'm just Muslim.
You're just Muslim.
I can say let's make it easy, I'm Sunni.
You're Sunni, all right.
I'm not a Muslim.
You are not Muslim. I thought you were Muslim. Why? I thought you were
No,
two
he was.
Muslims.
I was just recording.
Okay.
Sorry.
All
I
right.
also
I'm sorry.
said you were Muslim.
Okay. No
Muslims don't eat pork. Okay.
All right. Sunni Muslims don't use these types of things. Now, why don't they? Well, the thing is, Shia Muslims, by using a clay stone like this, they venerate the great-grandson of Ali, who was the son-in-law of Muhammad, because this great-grandson, called Hussein, he died in a place called Karbala in Iraq, and all these clay stones are made from that area. Shia Muslims in general love to venerate family members of the Prophet, like saints for the Catholics.
Yes.
Whereas Sunni Muslims, they don't do much of that, like the Protestants of Christianity. So we have a little box here saying La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, which is the Arab sentence for what you said before.
Yeah, before.
Which
There's no
means-
God to worship, but a man, Muhammad is his messenger.
Exactly. There's no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. There's a coin here saying, if you don't give things away but keep all money for yourself your whole life, you're going to have an awful afterlife. You're going to be punished. It doesn't say that on all coins, it actually does say it on this one, and this sentence, of course, is related to the fact that you have to pay 2.5% in tax yearly if you're a Muslim, following the rules. Finally, there's a picture here from a cafe poster from Cairo, not a very old poster, maybe 100 years old or so, showing people making ready to go on pilgrimage to Mecca, to see the Kaaba. New thing, Muhammad. You want to see how Muhammad is usually portrayed in the Muslim world? Good. This tile here is from India. In the bottom it says Ya Muhammad. At the top it says Ya Allah. O Muhammad, O God. This is a very common way of showing Muhammad. Just like with God, it's just a name. But it's not the only way. Sometimes in India, in Iran, and in Turkey, you find books with images also of prophets, also of Muhammad, for instance. So in this image up here, you can get closer later on, and in this book, there are nice pictures of Muhammad riding his fabulous horse with wings and the head of a girl. On this fantastic horse, Muhammad is able to Moses, Abraham, and other earlier prophets. He also meets God, and he's able to go back to the earth, to the world again. Is this the Quran? No, it cannot be. But it's another book about the life of the Prophet Muhammad. in those type of books, you can have images of Muhammad. Sometimes, as with the top picture, Muhammad's head is covered by a wheel, so that you don't see him, and behind his head there's a huge bonfire, like a halo of some kind. So you can see it's a holy man. In other books, like this one, from Iran, from year 1388, we know exactly where these things are from and when, because it says in the back of the book. I did this book in Iran in this day. You'll see an image of Muhammad without a veil. So it's a nice little picture of the Prophet. Now, did people go crazy in Iran in year 1388 when they saw this book? Well, I don't know, of course, but I don't think so. This is a book made by Muslims, for Muslims. There were nothing but Muslims in that area. We find those books in different places. The thing is, this text does not tell you that Muhammad is a big idiot. It tells you quite the opposite. This is not a provocative text in any way, so there's no problem. I think that's a clue to understanding the problem of imagery of things sacred to Muslims. If you make fun, or something worse than fun, some will be provoked. But it's not that images don't exist. They do exist in the Muslim world. But they exist in another way, in another context. Had there not been this huge crisis 20 years ago, I don't think I would even have mentioned this story, because they wouldn't have been so interesting. But now, I think a lot of people are a little confused about this issue of imagery. But the thing is, you can make imagery of everything, but not in the Quran, not in the mosque, and you don't want to make fun of what other people are very happy about. At least you run a risk that someone will get sad. Of course, people shouldn't go crazy for that, but you know, usually the people who are most provoked are others. Because sometimes you find yourself in New York, sometimes you find yourself in Johannesburg. How do you know where the Kaaba is?
Where the sun shines.
That's a good idea. If you've forgotten your mobile phone, because on the mobile phone you have a Mecca app, if you're a Muslim. If you've forgotten your mobile, you can look at the sun and you'll get an idea of it. Or you can go to the nearest mosque. All mosques have a wall facing the Kaaba. In the wall there will be a niche, like that one, a hollow thing, sometimes big, sometimes small, indicating the direction. This one's facing Malmö in Sweden, so don't pray that way. It's not made correct, but it's not a mosque, of course. Anyway, you go to the Kaaba in Mecca, and then you might buy a tile like this one as a souvenir. This is a souvenir tile. It's actually from year 1600, so it's an old souvenir. You put it in the wall once you're back in Belgium or in, where are you from? In Hungary, and then everyone can see this person has been on his pilgrimage, his Hajj, it's called. Have you been to Mecca? Are you going there? Inshallah, you will go there. Did your parents go? They didn't go. Maybe your great-grandparents?
One of my grandfathers went.
Okay. It's most Muslims never get to go because it's hard. You need money, you need the time. But if you go back in generation, usually there will be someone. So your great-grandfather did go.
Like not a great, but just the father of my father.
Yes, that's just your grandfather.
Yeah,
yes. I think he got a name when he got there. I think they call him Haji. Yeah. Al-Hajj. Everyone going there will be called, after going there, you'll be called Hajj. Or if you are a girl, Hajia. It becomes a title that you earn, yeah.
Can it be a surname as well? Because I know a
Yes.
person who has.
Yes, but it still means you've been to Mecca. But of course, if it's a surname, you might not have been there. But that's what it comes from. Hajia. Yeah.
Can I ask?
Yes, of course you can.
If before maybe you've not been there, Jamal.
Yes.
You've not been there before, and he is called Jamal.
Yes,
So after
he's going there. He'll still be called Jamal, but maybe in which city are you from in Tanzania? From Mwanza. So he goes home to Mwanza. Maybe they'll shout on the street, "Hey, Haji!" Because it's an extra name.
Before they call my name, they say Al-Hajj Jamal.
Yes.
So it's a title.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. We'll move to the next group. Imitating goods from China, actually, and then decorated in an Ottoman manner, which means a lot of flowers of different types. And the same is the case if you look at the textiles in the wall. And the same things as you see here, though not as old, can actually be bought today in Turkey. They still do these things. But what I want you to look at are these two tiles here, and tell me what they show. Let's start with the one to the right. It's the easy one. What does it show?
It's Mary and Jesus.
It's Mary and Jesus. That's right. So the one to the left, it's a man who's killing a dragon. He's always killing a dragon, this guy.
He's a saint.
He's a saint. Saint what? He's always killing a dragon.
George.
Yes, Saint George. He's riding a horse, and you see there's a dragon below the horse, a small one. Okay, so Mary, Jesus, George. Which religion are they from? Christian. Right. So what are they doing here? In the Ottoman?
Well, Islam, like, they recognize all
what?
like the prophets from, like Jesus and
From what religions?
Christianity,
And
Judaism.
Judaism. Right. So that could be one explanation. But these tiles were actually not for Muslims. They were for Christians. But the Christians were living in the Ottoman Empire. Because as I said earlier on, you'd have in this period and in other periods of the Islamic world, you have cities with Muslims living next to Christians, next to Jews. They would trade with each other. They would marry each other. They would do everything with each other. Because this is how the Muslim world was actually made up. You might have had a majority of Muslims in some areas, most areas, but you'd also have other religions. And especially Christians and Jews were often finding themselves in the main cities in their own neighborhoods. So, these tiles are from the Ottoman Empire. They were probably intended for a church somewhere in a Turkish city. Would you put up these tiles in a mosque? No. You put up these tiles in a mosque. These are perfect mosque tiles from a mosque in Istanbul. They don't show something particular, but they maybe show you something infinite. Very abstract, and there's something that just goes on and on. So it could be an image of something divine. A way of showing the divine, but not showing pictures. This is a Muslim way of decorating a sacred place. This is a Christian way. They both praise the same God, but they do it in a very different manner. Yeah, let's go to India. The last. India was part of the Muslim world. From this period, from this place, we have a lot of weapons and jewelry. A lot of the knives here, they have inlaid jewels of different kinds. So it's also a way of showing
jewelry as well.
Sorry?
They were used as jewelry.
They were used as jewelry as well as weapons. This is a pure jewelry. This is a pure jewelry. It's for the turban. Once you have arranged your turban, you can put this in the front like a feather. It's made of rubies, and then this green stone, I don't know the English word for it, smaragd. found in English?
Smaragd.
Smaragd, yeah. Okay, rubies, smaragds and gold. So a very fine thing to be put here as part of your uniform. All part of the world of art of the Muslim world. Now we'll see a little bling bling. That's the very last thing. Jewelry from India, and what might be a surprise to some of this jewelry was intended for men. So you'd have men, like perhaps this guy over here. You see the ruler and one of his mistresses. You see him wearing different types of jewelry, for instance, a necklace. A prince like him would maybe also like to have a necklace of rubies like that one, or diamonds like this one. Though I think some of these were for women actually, but they could have been for men, or they could be for women. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that the Indians were very good craftsmen when it came to jewelry, but it also tells us that Islam comes to express itself very differently depending where and when you're talking about. In some areas you'll find that Muslim women have to wear a scarf. In others, as for instance in this period, which is 18th century India, maybe it wasn't needed. You also find that the rulers were wearing jewelry, even the men. In other parts of the Islamic world, I'm not sure that would happen. Islam is not the same if you're in Morocco, or in Belgium, or in Germany, or in Turkey, or in Zanzibar. It comes out differently depending where and when. This is a very important point. And I think the David collection is quite a nice place to demonstrate all the differences. Different styles, but also different cultures. There's something that's always the same, the 5 pillars. But there are also things that are different. As with other religions, you don't have one type of Christianity. There'll be various traditions depending where you go. Same with Islam. Let's go down and wait for the others. If you press the green button here, I have a pleasant room for you for waiting for